Good day, and welcome to another in our series of daily meditation entitled A Time with God. Today's meditation was written and narrated by Sister Trudy-Ann McDonald.
Good day, brethren. Today's meditation is entitled Time with God. He answers our questions, taken from the entire book of Job, chapter 1 to chapter 42, particularly focusing on chapters 38 to 41, our background scripture. Can you imagine being a faithful, devout Christian who also happens to be one of the wealthiest persons in your community? You are content, your children and family are doing well, and you have everything at your disposal. Life is just going perfectly. You're away on a lovely vacation with your spouse. Then, oops, you get a phone call from your financial advisor that all your assets have been swallowed up, as is the case with Usain Bolt in the recent SSL saga. Then you got a second phone call that a massive earthquake struck in the region where you live, and your palatial home with everything in it, your children and babysitter who were asleep, have all died. Everything was crushed. God forbid. Unimaginable, innit? Pinch me, wake me up. This must be a bad dream, or just some of the thoughts that would be running through my mind. But this is not such a remote possibility, brethren, given all that is happening around us in the world today. Just listen to the nightly news. And it certainly was not far-fetched for Job. In fact, it was his morbid reality as was recorded in the book of Job. And if you haven't read the story, you're not familiar with it, now is a great time. It makes an interesting read. In summary, Job lost everything. In chapters 1 and 2, it tells us that he lost his position, children, his health. Yes, God even gave Satan permission to touch his health, but not his life. But Job felt as though, I might as well have been dead. He needed some answers, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you have questions for God? I don't know. Would you even want to talk to God? What answers could there possibly be? Before Job even got a chance to reconcile his state of nothingness, he was met with cynical judgment and counsel and condemnation from his three godly friends, his three holy and righteous friends who thought that surely Job must have sinned and brought this calamity on himself and was just clearly paying, these were just consequences of his actions. His wife told him to curse God and die. When Job realized that he had no support, his wife was telling him to curse God, his friends were judging him. Job became depressed. But Job made the mistake of isolating himself from God and continued to expose himself to this ungodly counsel. He was so caught up with his devastation and what the people were saying that he seemingly forgot to inquire of God. So this is lesson 1 for us. If we want to hear from God, we must learn how to tune out, distill, sift out the other voices, the other counsels, the other opinions around us, and seek God's perspective. Job's quest for answers only started in chapter 7, yes, but he was still so distracted by all that was going on around him. No answer was forthcoming from God until another 31 chapters. Was it that God wasn't listening? A resounding no, as we would find out later on. But Job could not hear God because he was so distracted by what was going on around him. Have you ever been there where there was so much going on around you that you felt like you weren't hearing from God or you couldn't hear from God? When you've had questions for God but nada answers. Well, there is good news. God finally speaks to Job. God broke the silence in Job chapters 38 through to chapter 41 by speaking to Job through a storm. A storm. I kind of wonder if the storm here represents all the chaos Job was experiencing, although there are different interpretations of what storm might have represented. Perhaps during his storm, Job should have spent more time seeking answers from the God who calms the storm, rather than focusing on the storm and complaining and exposing himself to unprofitable counsel. You see, God can even speak in the middle of our storms, whether they be a financial crisis, a health crisis, a broken relationship, the loss of a loved one, and the list goes on. If we take the time to inquire of him, if we only take time to listen. So this is lesson 2. God speaks even in the middle of our chaos and our storms. We just need to listen. God's response did not necessarily come in the package Job anticipated. Not only did God choose to respond to Job through a violent storm, but also with a barrage of questions back at Job. You read Job 38, 1-11, when God asked Job, "Where were you when I poured the foundations of the earth?" Job, settle yourself. Stop your wild tantrums. This is according to the Message version. Can you imagine? You're seeking answers and God throws back these questions at you? Well, not the kind of answers we'd expect, eh? Well, this is lesson 3. God answers, but the answer may not come how we want to hear it. But God's answers will come. It may not be through the still small voice that we're expecting, or through the great word of prophecy from the preacher, but it will come. It may come through a eureka moment, through a friend, a song, a word, a passage of scripture, a situation, a divine moment, a revelation, a dream, or God throwing back questions at us as he did with Job. But God will speak. Our job is to be in tune with God. Spend time getting to know him, getting to know his voice through the spiritual disciplines. This includes spending time studying his word, spending time in prayer and fasting. Because you see, the more time we spend with someone, the more we get to know them. The same is true of our relationship with God. If we want to hear God speak, we have to spend time with him. Job's account also demonstrates to us that God does not have to answer us. After all, he's sovereign. But being the relational God he is, he chooses to answer us. You see, we don't serve a dictator, but a God who is concerned with and empathizes with our experiences and who wants to offer his comfort and answers. Hebrews 4 verse 15 says, "For we have not an high priest which cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmities." This is lesson 4. God will answer us when we spend time to seek him because he cares. Not because he has to, but because he cares. He cared that Job was suffering, and he had a plan of restoration already set out for Job. God also has a plan for us too, and he cares for us. God's answer may not come how we expect it to be packaged. Isaiah 55 verses 8-9 states, "His ways are higher than our ways." God empathized and understood Job's pain, but perhaps he chose the method of responding from a storm or a whirlwind. In Job 38, perhaps one, to get Job's attention as Job was so caught up with himself and the noise around him, and 2, because God had a bigger purpose of greater mysteries than Job's personal suffering. The whirlwind is thought to represent a force beyond human understanding and control. This was taken from Michael Olmsted, 2019. God spoke to Job out of his divinity, out of his divine plan and purpose. You see, God in his sovereignty is always more concerned about what will bring him glory. Our limited understanding doesn't always allow us to see that. In Job's situation, God wanted to prove to Satan that Job, and even our faithfulness to him, is not contingent on what he does for us, but simply because we accept that he's God. He's sovereign and worthy of our praise. His answer always speaks to his sovereignty as God and in alignment with his sovereign will, which is not always in line with our limited human understanding. This is lesson 5. Finally, funny, as I was here trying to finish up this commentary, I was told by very disturbing news. I had to abandon the task, putting me at risk of not meeting the deadline for submission that Sister Tana had given me. I went outside to attend to a construction work at my house, who called me to alert me that a very expensive piece of equipment that we had rented had just broken from him. My first question, talking to God here, was, "Why, Lord?" Yeah, you guessed right. "Why, Lord?" I took a moment to be still and smiled as he whispered. This time he spoke to me through a whisper. And this is what he said: "Glorify me with your response." I took the time to listen. I took the time to put my ego aside. There was my answer. You see, this man was not a Christian. This was a grand opportunity for this man to see that Christians behave differently, an opportunity for my light to shine that this man might see and come to glorify my Father in heaven. Matthew 5, verse 16. That was why. Not that God wasn't concerned about the fact that we would have had to find monies to fix this thing. But God was more concerned about the bigger picture, the opportunity for someone to be led to Christ, for him to be saved. You see, friends, God always answers. When we can't see his hand, when we can't see his plan, will we trust his heart? He answers every prayer. He answers, however, in line with his sovereign will and purpose, which at all times reflects that which will bring him and him alone glory. He always answers when we spend time to ask him. Will we trust his sovereignty today? Our God answers prayers.
Is for certain. His God answers prayer.
Thanks for joining the Harbour Seventh-day Baptist Church for a Time with God Devotional. Do